welcome to this August 24th edition of CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski with my co-host Josh Fisher. Josh, we have a lot to get to today.
Yeah, great show today.
Great show, and first up, our guest, Trumbull First Selectman Tim Herbst. He's serving his fourth term in office, and he's also become a prominent state Republican, particularly making a name statewide during the 2014 election when he narrowly lost the state treasurer's race to incumbent Denise Napier. Now, Tim requested to join us today to respond to some of the criticisms we had recently of his social media behavior. Just to recap for anyone that missed that show, earlier this month, First Selectman Herbst shared some messages that a citizen sent him calling him a bad word. The Trumbull Republicans also shared those messages, though it was later deleted. And that resident, Scott Kokosa, who had run for Board of Finance, Tim called out his former opponent, Vicky Tesoro, who challenged him in the First Selectman's race for having Kokosa on her ticket. He also suggested that maybe the comments were worth some media coverage, and we had a lot to say about that, Josh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I know you had some harsh words.
Yeah, I did. I referred to you as petty and the Donald Trump of Connecticut, among some other things. So I think before we get into it, Tim, I think that the polite thing to do would be to offer you a response.
You have the floor.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on, and let me just say that, you know, as we see the national campaign unfold, as we've seen state elections unfold, and as we've seen local politics unfold, there has been a tremendous emphasis on the discourse that we have, and there's been a tremendous emphasis on civility. And when candidates run for public office, it's one thing to be direct, straightforward, tell it like it is. It's another thing to be juvenile. And I think it's important and significant to note that when I select people to run on my ticket, or when my former opponent selected people to run on her ticket, the way they conduct themselves is as much a reflection upon you as it is on their own conduct and their own character. And when you select somebody to run on a board that is responsible for a $171 million budget that impacts people's lives, their school system, their quality of life, their taxes, it's important how that person conducts themselves. And to use vulgarity is something that, quite frankly, needs to be called out. And to say that someone is petty for calling it out, you know, if we're going to call out people as to how they conduct themselves. One of the things that Donald Trump is dealing with right now is he gets called out a lot for how he says things and how he, you know, refers to people and the language that he uses. If we're going to do that, we have to be consistent. So if we're going to call out Republicans for how they conduct themselves, like I was called out for calling somebody out who acted in a very unprofessional manner and shouldn't be using vulgarity to make a point. I'm known for telling it like it is. I'm very direct. I say exactly what I think. Sometimes you're going to agree with me, you're going to disagree with me. That's who I am, and I'm not about to change. But at the same time, I should, and everyone should, be able to have spirited debate, spirited discussion, be direct, be blunt, be straightforward, without having to be juvenile and using juvenile language.
Well, to be fair, Tim, Scott shared some messages of yours where you used bad language or you used a rude gesture, let's say.
It was the middle,
emoji.
middle
finger
emoji.
So, and in any case, he didn't end up being elected. So he still is a private citizen. I mean, do you have any respect for that maybe you are the highest elected leader in Trumbull and this man didn't get elected? So why call him out in such a public way?
Well, because there are people that like to talk about civility and civility in politics, and the people that talk about civility a lot in the town of Trumbull tend to be some of the most uncivil people that I've ever encountered in public life, and I can say that with the experience of not only running 4 times in the town of Trumbull, but also running a statewide election. I can tell you that I have seen senior citizens be insulted on social media by members of the Trumbull Democratic Town Committee. I have seen people be insulted in public at meetings by members of the Trumbull Democratic Town Committee. So look, here's the deal. There are a lot of good people in Trumbull in both parties that want to move the town forward in a responsible way. But unfortunately, there are a handful of people that preach civility, that talk about compromise, that talk about working together, that aren't interested in doing that and are, quite frankly, very uncivil. And I don't think that's productive. And if I think that it's worthy of being called out, to draw attention to the fact that that kind of behavior needs to be called out, I'm going to do that.
But have you ever been uncivil on social media to others?
I've been direct. I haven't used on social media.
You've never called someone a troll on social media?
I've used that term before, absolutely.
Okay. So would you consider that being civil?
It's not a swear word.
But
It's not calling
So
somebody.
is it just the bad language element?
calling someone a jerk, you would say, is uncivil, but that's not a swear word.
Well, you know what? Calling somebody I don't want to repeat it.
Okay, that's
bleep
fine.
Head
Right.
is
Yeah.
not responsible.
Right,
Using
and
the F word with people is not responsible.
But
And that's-
civility doesn't. Just forgive me for interrupting you. But civility is not just about swearing. Civility is about respecting someone else's opinion and their right to have
Absolutely.
an opinion and talk. But calling someone a troll or
Saying they
someone's-
need to seek the services of the counseling center, which you have said on
Absolutely.
Facebook. Do you regret saying any of those things that you might have said in the past? Were they out of anger?
Sure, there's
Tell
some
us.
things that I regret saying, of course.
Okay.
But you know what? When we talk about civility, you also have to tell the truth. And what I found very interesting was the behavior that you were calling out on your last show, and some of the things you were accusing me of, with all due respect, you were engaging in by referring to me as a Donald Trump Republican, when you know full well, or you should know, that I voted for John Kasich in the primary,
So
just
did I.
like you voted for John Kasich in the primary. So to label people and to not paint the full picture, and to not hold people in both parties to the same standard, it's just not fair.
Well-
So if you were consistent with holding people accountable like you held me accountable, I'd have more respect for what you said about me. But you don't do that.
Okay, well, first of all, this isn't about me, but I believe that I go a lot harder after the Democrats than I do
He was
most
very hurt
Republicans.
by being called a member of the liberal media. I can tell you that.
As someone who has been critical of Dan Beloy since before he was elected in office here, and has been critical of other elected Democrats in the state, and critical of Republicans too. To me, it doesn't matter what party you're of. It's about what you do and who you are. I am a registered Republican. I tend to vote Republican. I've voted for you before in 2014.
Thank you.
Oh, look, there's the ballot.
There's my ballot. I took a picture of it too. And you're the only one I actually voted for as a Republican also. Everyone else I voted for on the independent line. And what really interested me, Tim, is you. When I was editor of the New Canaan Advertiser, I had you at our community coffee, which we used to hold every Friday.
Stamford, Connecticut.
Stamford, Connecticut. That's where I live. Yeah.
Okay, I see Michael Altamora's name there.
Yeah. So, and it's a little tradition I have ever since I got a phone with the camera on. Is like take a picture of my ballot, just for posterity reasons, I guess, my own personal ones. I'll show the kids one day all the bad decisions I've made in my life. But so. I was really, I thought you gave me some hope for the Republican Party. I had you at our coffee in New Canaan when I was editor of that paper, which, we had, a good 40, 50 people showed up to come and hear you speak there. And I really thought that you showed a lot of hope. So I started following you closer. And I got very disappointed in how I thought that you were better than the Linda McMahon. Well, I mean, Linda McMahon's not a fair person to compare you to, because you certainly have some more substance than she does, and you have a track record of being elected and of governing. But it's the pettiness, and I don't understand why you would go after someone who lost a Board of Finance race.
Let me just say this.
Okay.
Regarding the comment about Linda McMahon, Linda McMahon, when we talk about substance, say what you want about her politically. She's built a business from the ground up. She came back from bankruptcy. She created jobs in the state of Connecticut. She's kept her business in the state of Connecticut when every other business is leaving the state of Connecticut, including GE. So to talk about substance, I think it's a little disingenuous for either you or I, as millennials.
I'm not a millennial.
No, well, okay.
Please.
You look like a millennial.
Okay.
You do, but
Okay.
I'm just saying. I think it's just a little disingenuous to tell somebody who's created jobs, who employs people, who's had to go through bankruptcy, who's had to come back from that to build a company that's now publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
But that doesn't mean that you'd be a good U.S. senator.
No, but you just said that she doesn't.
She
have
does
any
not have
substance.
political
But
substance.
this isn't about Linda McMahon.
You said substance, and I just think if you're
Right.
going to.
Right, and I stand by that opinion. But this isn't about her. I know she gave you a lot of money too for your past elections, so you're probably a little bit loyal to her.
It has nothing to do with what she gave
and
you. It has
possibly-
everything to do with the fact that you didn't say political substance. You said she doesn't have any substance. She's created.
Then
That's fair.
Okay.
She's
That's
created
fair.
more
Fair
jobs
point,
than you
fair
have.
point.
She's
That's a
built
fair
more
point.
But
businesses in Connecticut.
let's move
than
back
you
to
have.
you. Let's
I
move
don't
back
think
to you,
that's
Mr.
fair.
Herbst.
So I do want to say, and you mentioned that we were doing some of the same stuff that we were calling you out on. And to be fair, this is a opinion show, and this isn't connected to, there's no editorial call that we have in the Trumbull Times paper or any of our other papers, though we work together with them. But do you agree, though, you get paid by taxpayer dollars, you're the highest elected leader, should you be on a different standard?
I think that the leader of the town has an obligation to be honest. And quite frankly, in this day and age, Kate, and with all due respect, and I respect your opinions, I might disagree with them, I think given where we are as a country, as a state, and as towns and cities, not only in Connecticut but across the nation, I think that the time for political correctness is over. I don't think being politically correct should be the norm. I think telling it like it is and sometimes saying things that people don't like to hear or they might take offense at sometimes, unfortunately, I think is the new era that we live in. I think one of the reasons why the country is as divided as it is, and I think why voters are as angry as they are. And here's one of the things we have to acknowledge. I did not vote for Donald Trump. John Kasich was my candidate in the primary, but Donald Trump received 14 million votes in the Republican primary. He received more votes than any modern Republican presidential candidate since Dwight Eisenhower. So I think it underscores that there are people in this country, maybe not the majority, but there are people in this country that are tired of the political correctness. And I think the political correctness and the political decision making and doing what is politically correct instead of doing what might be what your conscience or your gut or your convictions tell you to do is why we are where we are as a country. So I think that are there times I say things that I regret? Of course there are. Are there things that I wish I could go back and change in the 7 years I've been first selectman? Absolutely. I'm human just like the two of you, and I make mistakes just like the two of you, and nobody's perfect. But I do tell it like it is, and I do call people out in both parties. I'd like to remind you that when a Republican on the Republican State Central Committee flew a Confederate flag in front of their house, I was one of the first Republican leaders in the state of Connecticut to call that State Central member out. And I actually was criticized by members of my own party for doing that. But I didn't care because I thought it was the right thing to do. I called out people in my party for not voting in an election. That probably wasn't the politically correct thing to do, in calling out members of my own party, but I did it because it was the right thing to do. So there are going to be things that I do that people agree with and they don't agree with, and there are going to be people that think I should do X instead of Y, and I accept that. But one thing I do not do is vacillate. One thing I do not do is lack having a spine. And sometimes I say things in a very blunt and direct way because I believe you have to be blunt and direct sometimes to make a point. And I believe if we're going to hold Republicans to a certain standard for tone and civility and how they use certain language, you have to be consistent in how you apply that criticism, whether the person is an office holder or whether they're a candidate for public office. And if somebody's going to sit on a board of finance and be responsible for a $171 million budget, and they're chosen by a person who preaches civility, they need to be held accountable when they send inconsistent messages to the public.
Why is it okay for you to call people out, but it seems like it's not okay for people to call you out?
No, I could get, look, you guys called me out.
No, right. And then you tried to call my boss. You didn't call me.
So, but
that's what I'm wondering. So this gentleman.
The question I asked your boss was whether this was a program, an opinion program, which you've just
confirmed. Okay, right, but I shouldn't have even brought that up because that's not the point here, Tim. Tim, the point is, so Scott Koska says something about Kokoska says something about you, and you posted on social media a screenshot of it and pointed out, but it's okay for you to refer to him and send him the middle finger emoji, but it's not okay for him to use the D word when referring to you. Why is that the case?
Well, let me just say something. When somebody attacks me the day that I'm burying my grandmother, which is when that was sent, I'm sorry, I find it a little offensive. And sometimes you need to take a break from attacking people when a member of their family has passed away.
Okay,
right. And he apologized for that, according to him. I don't know if that's true.
But there are other times, and I'm sorry about your grandmother, but but you're also a big boy. You're the first selectman of Trumbull. You're supposed to be, you're a public figure. You want to run for higher office. You almost got elected state treasurer. There's certainly a lot of talk about you wanting to run for governor. Things are going to get worse than you're getting called a bad word in a private text message. How are you going to handle that?
Well, you know what? I have handled it, because let me tell you something.
How are you going to handle it differently? How are you going to
Okay.
handle it better than resorting
You're
to
so-
your
you're-
dad posting a screenshot of this on social media?
My,
Your dad posted
dad
this
shared
on,
it.
on,
Okay,
on,
well,
on the
first of all-
GOP site. So I'm wondering if
First
this
of all-
happens when you're running for governor in
first of all,
2018.
what private citizens do on social media is different from what I do on social media. If you want to hold me accountable for what I do on social media, I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But we don't need to bring up private citizens, retired people, and what they do on social media. Number one.
I don't agree
Number
with
two,
that. You're
number-
bringing up what someone who
number-
ran for office and lost,
Are you
and
gonna-
half a year
Are
later.
you going to let me finish?
No,
Okay.
I'm going to finish my statement here, then
Okay,
you can
you're
talk.
gonna interrupt me. Okay.
Okay, so, but you brought up a private citizen, what they did, and you posted it on social media
Mm-hmm.
6 months after the election was over and they didn't win, and then you're asking the opponent, the Vicky Tesoro, who you beat, what she thinks of this 6 months later. Why is that okay?
Because it isn't an isolated incident. It's on repeated occasion. And quite frankly, the person who posted it is somebody that is very much in the public sphere, very much takes positions on public issues, ran for public office, and arguably probably will run for public office again if they are a resident of the town.
It bothers you that you only won by about 300 votes, right? You were
Not
only
at all, I
reelected.
won.
That doesn't bother you?
Not at all.
You're not still like, that's
Not
not
at
still
all.
bothering you?
Well,
I lost a statewide election by 0.6%.
Right,
That
but
didn't
in
bother
your
me
own
either.
in your own hometown, the Democrats like more than doubled how many people came, almost doubled how many people came out and voted
They had
for
a stronger
them,
candidate.
and you lost about 800 votes.
Well, and we
in the
also
election.
maintain supermajorities on every board and commission in the town.
Right, but no, I'm talking about you. But so it does. It seems like it kind of bothers you
Not at
still.
all.
No,
Not at all. You
No?
know why? Because every election's different. Issues are different in every election. And look, I lost a statewide election by 0.6%. I've been elected 4 times in a town that had one party rule for 32 out of 36 years. I was the first Republican re-elected in 40 years in the town of Trumbull since Larry Hyman in 1971. And I have had 4 elections, 3 of which were tough elections because of overcoming history. You know, when I ran for re-election in 2011, I felt like the Boston Red Sox before they had a series of winning streaks. It was tough
Yeah.
because no Republican had been re-elected before.
Right.
I ran against a 16-year incumbent who received the most votes of any statewide candidate 4 years earlier and came within 0.6%. Am I upset that I lost? Sure, but am I proud of the campaign I waged? Of course I am. Am I proud of my record in Trumbull? I absolutely am. Look, I don't think any other first selectman, Republican or Democrat, in the region can say that they have reduced taxes twice in 7 years. I don't think any Republican or Democratic chief executive can say that they inherited a pension fund at 27% and are now fully funding the annual required contribution and have seen a credit upgrade in spite of the Great Recession. I don't think any other municipal chief executive can point to our recently released standardized test scores on the SBAC and the fact that Realtor.com ranked our school system as in the top 10 nationwide most in demand. That does not happen by accident. A first selectman or a mayor has to work with a board of education to properly fund education. And I don't think any other chief executive, Republican or Democrat, can point to a growing economy each and every year, a grand list that is showing incredible growth in spite of a bad economic
But pretty
condition
much
in our state.
every wealthy town in Fairfield County sees their grand list grow.
Well,
I
don't-
can't think of one
well, I
where
don't
it's gone
think there-
down.
I don't think there's any town in Fairfield County that saw a nearly 11% growth in their commercial grand list in 1 year alone.
Okay.
And I can tell you that if you drive around Trumbull, like Kate has, you're seeing an economic development renaissance that has happened because we've kept taxes stable, we've kept the town affordable, and we've marketed the town effectively to businesses, and I'm proud of that.
Now, Tim, we're not taking away from your accomplishments when we talk about what you've done as first selectman, but my criticisms, at least, are based on how you sometimes go about it. I mean, I've received press releases from your office that say, you know, a state senator you didn't like had, you know, needed to get his head examined by the Yale psychology department, and you know, things like that.
Well, let's
that
discuss
tone.
the subject. Well, let's discuss
Sure.
the subject matter. That press release came from 3 first selectmen, and
I
you're
remember.
paraphrasing what I said, but that state senator was one of only 2 state senators to vote to release the Sandy Hook crime photos. Let me finish. One of only 2 state senators, okay? Martin Looney, I think we can all agree, Martin Looney, Bob Duff, before the current senator from New Haven, Tony Harp, very liberal. Even they said this crosses the line. And given the fact that we had a resident in Trumbull who lost her life defending the children of Sandy Hook Elementary School, you know what? I seriously question a person's thought process and judgment when you are only one of 2 people in the state Senate that would vote to release those crime photos when the governor said it was wrong, when Republican leaders said it was wrong, and when an overwhelming majority of state reps and senators said it's wrong. I think it goes to a person's judgment, their thought process, and it makes me question whether they can objectively and realistically, synthesize the consequence of making a decision like that.
Well, to be fair, their vote was in favor of freedom of information, which is something, obviously, as a media company, we support. And I actually give credit to that former state senator for making that choice because he was only one of 2 people. I mean, that's standing your ground in something you believe in that people might try to politicize something like Sandy Hook, as could happen, and make you look bad, which I felt happened in that situation. But we have differing opinions on that.
You should ask Bill Sherlock how he feels.
I know, that's a horrible tragedy.
You should ask Bill Sherlock how he feels.
Up,
you know what? It was brought up because it was egregious. There are 36 members of the Connecticut State Senate. Notwithstanding the fact that you're from the media and you have certain positions on freedom of information laws, I get that. I understand that. There are 36 members of the Connecticut State Senate. Only two of the 36 voted in the affirmative. There are 151 members of the Connecticut General Assembly. I don't even think anyone in the State House of Representatives voted for that. And you know what? There are certain lines you don't cross. That was the most horrific tragedy in the history of the state of Connecticut. And you know something? There are certain lines you don't cross. And the press gains nothing from seeing crime scene photos of victims laying in that building. You gain nothing from it.
And that is, I understand, and that is your opinion, and I don't want to get sidetracked. What I'm saying is...
And that's Dan Malloy's opinion.
Right. What I'm saying is, well, he has the lowest approval. But anyway, I do just want to ask about some claims that residents make. Have you ever called someone's employer, we're not talking about Josh here, have you ever called someone's employer if they've criticized you on social media? Or have you asked someone to call someone's employer if they've criticized you? Because a lot of people have said that has happened. And that feels like intimidation.
Well, I've heard that before. And I can tell you something. Any conversations that I've had with any business owners or companies that might employ people who are politically active in the town of Trumbull have been conversations about the town of Trumbull, have been conversations about their business, and have not been directly aimed at an individual or a person. I've had people, business owners, ask me in a generic context about the political atmosphere in the town, and I've answered that question when asked. But this is a criticism that has been raised time and again, and quite frankly, has not been very specific. It's been spoken of in generalities, but in 7 years, I cannot recall one person who's come forward directly to say that Tim Herbst contacted my employer and wanted me to be fired. Have you ever had one person come forward directly and go on the record and say that? The answer is no. The answer is no. So you
haven't done it?
No, I have
just
not directly.
So we're on record.
I have not
here.
directly
Okay.
contacted anybody's employer about a person's employment.
Okay. Now, a lot of people talk about, politics in Trumbull as a blood sport. Perhaps before you were there, I
Yes, it
imagine
was.
we've talked about that. But do you feel like you play a part in contributing to that negativity? I mean, you started Trumbull Talks as an answer to Keep Trumbull Real, which are 2 Facebook groups, because you felt like people were criticizing you a lot in there. And some people, nasty, I get that. But do you feel like you contributed all to that? And you help keep that going?
I think by virtue of who I am and the position I hold, and the fact that we have a vibrant 2-party system in the town of Trumbull, I don't think there's any way to get around that. And it's going to happen for the next first selectman, whoever that person may be. It's just the nature of the beast in Trumbull. Trumbull politics are rough. They've always been rough. I've had conversations with Nancy DiNardo, who I actually, even though we're in opposite parties, I respect her immensely. We get along well. We've had conversations about how this has gone on in Trumbull, unfortunately, for 35 plus years. It's the nature of the beast. I should point out, though, I'm glad you raised this, because if you recall, when I was sworn into my 4th term in December of 2015, I asked the following. I asked the loyal opposition to produce an alternate legislative agenda, to propose specific legislative proposals that they would offer. I asked them to propose an alternate budget, because during the course of the campaign, what they said was, We're going to provide $8 million additional dollars for public education. We're going to reduce the mill rate, and we're going to reduce your taxes. Well, the money's got to come from somewhere. So I said to them, look, if you believe we can provide $8 million additional dollars to public education, reduce the mill rate, reduce taxes, do all the things you promised you were going to do in the campaign, I welcome an alternate budget. I welcome an alternate legislative agenda. If there are things that you ran on during the course of the campaign that you want to make legislative priorities for the town, well, you have 5 people on the town council that can introduce legislation. And Carl Massaro has been the type of chairman that brings it to the floor and allows the committees to vet it and give it an up and down vote. Over the last 8 months, we haven't had an alternate budget proposed. Not one positive legislative agenda has been proposed by them, not an ordinance, not a legislative measure, not a policy position. Nothing has been proposed. And the only thing that has been happening is constant attacks on social media. Now, if you want people to give you the keys to town hall, if you're the loyal opposition, and if you want the people of Trumbull to give you the keys to town hall, one of the things I learned when I ran against Ray Baldwin in 2009, when I challenged an incumbent, is you cannot just say why the incumbent's bad. You have to tell people what you're going to do. So in 2009, we ran a positive campaign that talked about keeping taxes stable, improving the pension fund, implementing full-day kindergarten, growing the economy, updating our plan of conservation and development, doubling senior citizen tax relief, pursuing a community center. These are things we talked about, and these are things in large measure we've implemented. So what I'm saying is you're not seeing anything positive, nothing. And I would challenge you and anyone else in the media to point to me anything positive that's been offered in the last 8 months. Because when you don't do that, that breeds negativity. Because what politics should be about is 2 different visions, 2 sets of goals and priorities that could be in sync on some things, and in other issues might be competing, but give people something to chew on and give people something to look at.
Well, to be fair, we don't cover Trumbull extensively. We know what's going on in all of our towns, but what we're talking about is we don't see another town leader that handles things the same way that you do. And I mean, we can talk about when you ran against Ray Baldwin, and you know, there was Trumbull chat, and I'm sure that a lot of your supporters were on there saying negative and nasty things about him at the time. So we're not going to, I mean, the parties go at each other. That's going to happen.
Arguably.
But is there a way that you can improve, that you want to improve the way that some of these things get handled?
Kate, what I said before, I'll stand by. In politics, there's always going to be attacks. There's always going to be criticism. You're always going to be under the microscope. People are always going to Monday morning quarterback or second guess your judgment. That always happens. The point I'm trying to raise is whether you like my style or don't like my style, or whether you like Dan Malloy's style or don't like his style, or whether you're going to compare this leader to that leader, at the end of the day, I don't care who you are, I don't care what level of government you're at, and I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. You have to tell people what you're going to do, and you have to produce results. I get the fact that people sometimes do not like my style. I get that. But I am a results-oriented leader, and I believe in the bottom line. And I respect and understand the fact that there are people that might not like my style, but nobody can argue with the results. And I think if you look what's gone on in Trumbull over the last 7 years, it has been moving the town forward. It has been delivering on campaign promises, which very few politicians do. It's saying, this is my agenda, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is how we are going to accomplish it. And I think that's how I'm a different kind of leader. Not just because of my style, the fact that I'm blunt, I'm direct, I tell it like it is, but because I believe in getting results and implementing and keeping your word and doing what you said you're going to do. And that's what we've done.
Do you also think, though, that some of those things have ripped the town apart? I mean, we had, when I was there, the Great Minds painting debacle. You sort of threatened that you were going to bring up the, you know, librarian on ethics charges and all of that. I mean, those are things that really look bad for Trumbull, first of all. And then...
Not to mention the infringement of the First Amendment.
Right.
Let's just address
or
that.
the infringement of the Trumbull Town Charter by taking over. Like, the first selectman's not supposed to have control of what the library does.
No, well, the first selectman appoints the members of the library board.
But doesn't have control of what the library director does, which is what you tried to do in that instance.
No, that's not the case. If that was a loaded double barrel, so if I can respond to that.
Yeah.
First of all, I know that you guys in the media wanted to make it about the First Amendment, and I get that. But let me just say something, okay? Well, you can laugh, but when you run a municipality and you put $350,000 of artwork in a public building that isn't insured and does not have a written agreement between the parties, that presents a liability to the town.
Right. No, you
And
did
he
a
was
great job
ready
spinning.
to-
You did a great job spinning that into making
was
that
ready
the
to
issue.
sign
No,
that
I was
indemnity
like,
agreement.
I was like, wow,
Not a
this
que-
guy is brilliant. You
not
did
a
a great job of spinning
Why
it.
was that the only painting
Yeah.
that
Why
was
did you only
taken
want
down?
one painting
Not a
taken
question
down?
of spinning it. Because
Why do you want
there-
only one painting taken
Because
down?
there were issues that were raised.
But only one
outside-
painting, not the whole painting.
The copyright, which another attorney
and the
said
painting,
was ridiculous.
And the painting went back up. So what
Okay.
you just said in that little narrative you just constructed is, you tried
We're
to-
both constructing
No.
narratives. You're
Yeah.
constructing one
You
too.
just said that the painting came down when you knew the painting went back up, but you didn't say that, did you?
Yes, the painting went back up
Only
after
when
all
I
this
brought it.
pressure.
No, when I brought it up is
After
when you
you
said
had
it.
it taken down.
Because a copyright
But you only had
issue-
one, but copyright issue, it's a painting in a library.
I understand that.
Which is supposed to celebrate
isn't
all sorts of
insured-
ideas,
that isn't
not just the
insured.
ideas of the chief executive of the
It's not a
town where
question
the
of my
library
ideas.
is.
Quite frankly, I didn't have a problem with the artwork. I didn't think it was that pretty, but I didn't have a problem with its content. Some people in the community did have a problem with its content. A lot of people came to the library board meeting to exercise their First Amendment rights to object to the content.
Sure, that was their right
I am
to
not
do.
an art critic. I am not an art critic, and it is not my place to say what belongs in a library and what does not belong in a library. But my responsibility as the first selectman of the town of Trumbull is to protect the town from liability. So if a party makes an allegation of copyright infringement, absent a legal agreement between the town and the art collector or the art holder, and absent that property being insured, you see, this is what nobody wants to talk about. Let's say, for example, God forbid, lightning struck the Trumbull Library, and the library burned to the ground, and that
Or somebody
artwork-
vandalized the painting, as happened, and they've never been
Okay.
caught.
Let's just say something happened and the artwork was destroyed. If there was not an agreement, and if that artwork was not insured, the town of Trumbull would have been on the hook for $350,000. So I would ask the two of you, what do you think the taxpayers of the town of Trumbull would say in the aftermath if they found out that $350,000 of artwork was in a public town building without a written memorandum of understanding between the owner and the town and absent insurance?
I would hope that most people in Trumbull would rather see art have a right to hang how the library sees fit than have the first selectman meddle in something that is not his job.
Well, you know what, Josh?
That's what I hope would happen.
Well, you know, and Josh, and that's why I think you would have great difficulty doing my job.
I don't want
He
your
doesn't
job.
want
I don't
your- we
want your job,
job.
Tim.
No, you don't-
Tim,
no,
I'm not running against you. I'm just
Well,
watching
I'm
you.
just saying,
That's all.
you know, you guys in the press are very good at criticizing politicians, and I get that it's part of your job.
But
you
you're
know,
very good at being mean to people on
No,
social
you know
media
what?
also. So
You're
I mean,
very good at
and saying,
criticizing
and you're very good at
politicians.
saying that what Jim
But,
does is
Josh,
wrong,
can I
but what
finish?
Tim does is right.
Josh, I try not to interrupt
Go ahead,
you.
please
May I
finish.
Well, you're not doing that well of a job
Well,
at it. But go ahead, Tim.
you're
Please,
doing, You're doing a
please.
much better job of interrupting.
Thank
but let
you,
me just,
thank you.
Let me finish this. You know what? I understand you have to criticize people in my line of work. I get that. But I really don't think you appreciate what it's like to do our work. Because, you know what, Josh? If the town attorney came to you, if you were in my shoes, if the town attorney came to you and said, we have $350,000 for artwork in a public building where there's no agreement and there's no insurance, you know,
Then I would have all of them removed, not just the one painting that people had complained to you that said was offensive
but the
because
painting
Margaret
was-
Sanger
but the
and Mother
painting-
Teresa were in
The painting
it.
was back up when that happened. The painting was put back up.
Right, after there was outrage.
Right.
over
Well,
it.
after
copyright
emails,
issues were
you know,
raised.
there
Yeah.
people had contacted
So-
your office about it.
But there's no-
beforehand.
but yeah.
Several
right.
people.
But-
So what I'm saying is, I understand the need to criticize, to maybe Monday morning quarterback, to draw attention to certain issues. But you know what? If anything happened, that library burned down. You know who would have been the first to have been blamed, and you know who the media would have been blaming. They would have been blaming the library board. They would have been blaming
right.
the first selectman.
All
And
right.
that's where
Well-
the buck stops. So I get that you have to criticize, but I
Okay.
think if you guys ever had to do the kinds of jobs that we do for one day, I think you'd have a much different perspective.
I think if you had to do our job, you'd have a much different perspective too.
It's true. But Tim, we do appreciate you having this discussion with us.
No, I appreciate it.
All
This
of
was
our
fun.
guests
This
we
was
have,
fun.
all of our guests we have on, we do ask them what they think about the upcoming presidential election. So tell us what you think.
If you were to ask me a year ago where it would be right now, I would have told you, no way. I don't make it a point to predict. I'll say this, though. I I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a change in how demographic patterns will vote in this election. For example, I don't think Mr. Trump will win Connecticut. Some people think he will, but I think he's going to perform better in parts of the state, like Eastern Connecticut, Northwest Corner, the Valley. You're seeing a realignment of the Republican Party right now, in terms of the value set, the value system, the fact that you had record levels of turnout in the primary season. That's what I remind people sometimes. This was a record high turnout for Republican primary voters. I think the first debate is going to be very critical for him to kind of eliminate that stigma and talk about,
if he does it,
where he
We'll
wants
see.
to lead the country. And I also think that the revelations about the Clinton Foundation, I think, are going to be perhaps even more damning to Hillary Clinton than the email controversy with her private server, as stuff comes out. So it's concerning to me. But
Are you going to vote for Trump?
I don't make it a point of telling people who I'm going to vote for.
But, okay.
I don't put my ballot on TV.
You're right.
Okay.
Well, and just so you know, hey, we follow Connecticut politics. I know Josh especially is passionate about it. You've run into him a few times on Twitter, I'm sure.
Yes, I have.
But we're going to
Still can't
continue.
get a follow, though.
I'm sorry, but if we disagree with you on something, we're going to call it out.
I have no problem with that, and I welcome the opportunity that if you disagree with me, if you want to call me in advance, I'll come in and have the conversation with you right then and there, so we don't have to do 2 episodes. We could just do 1.
All right.
It's fun. We'd love to have you back. This is a good time.
No, thank you.
Well, we
it.
appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very, very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Well, we are going to step out for a break. When we come back, we have some stories we're following this week, Doug Smith's editorial cartoons, and a lot more after this.
Kate's not allowed to have spicy lattes.
Have a sports injury or a slip and fall that needs immediate care? Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care gives you direct access to an orthopedic specialist fast, without an appointment. Biking, golf, tennis, soccer, whatever the sports injury is, sprain or fracture, Coastal Ortho Express can help. Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care, open Monday through Saturday, now in 2 locations. The iPark building at 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk and 36 Old Kings Highway South in Darien. Or go to coastalorthoexpress.com, like them on Facebook.
Hi, this is Leo Carl from Carl Chevrolet in New Canaan. And you've heard me talk about the Chevy Volt for years. The new model gets 53 miles on EV charge daily, plus 420-mile full range. But don't take my word for it. You need to come in and test drive the Volt yourself. Visit us at 261 Elm Street in New Canaan or online at carldirect.com.
For more than 50 years, Triple S has been Fairfield County's expert service for carpet, upholstery, and drapery cleaning. We provide the best in repairs and in-depth restoration, understanding fabrics and how to properly clean and restore them. Our staff will come to your home to clean your wall-to-wall carpet to perfection. We can also pick up your fine carpets and bring them to our facilities. With locations in Norwalk, Stamford, and Stratford, Triple S will get the job done fast, big or small. At Triple S, you can count on our people as well as our cleaning. Find us at triplesclean.com or 203-847-8000.
I'm John Kovach. I'm a newspaper editor. I'm a high school football coach. I'm a television presenter. And I want you to love fishing as much as I do. Tune into Yankee Fisherman, Thursdays at 1 on the HAN network. It's like going to the tackle shop without leaving your office.
You're watching the HAN network, and you're not alone. More than 1.5 million viewers have watched our live sports, news, and entertainment broadcasting since the network launched in August 2015. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Advertising Director Jessica Murrin at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
Walter Stewart's Market in New Canaan is your time-saving local shopping destination for the best of spring. Find many of your favorite products, from great specials on everyday items to the freshest organic produce, artisanal cheeses, and grass-fed steaks. Drop off your knives to be sharpened, grab a beautiful bouquet of spring flowers, and stop in next door for a wine tasting. Plus, their personable staff is always ready to lend a helping hand. So stop in to Walter Stewart's Market, 229 Elm Street today, or shop online at stewartsmarket.com.
I really wanted something that felt like a home. Coming from a big house, I wanted the feel of a home as opposed to a condo. My property taxes on my single-family home were close to $20,000 a year. Now that I've downsized and I'm in a townhome, and because of the condo tax laws, my fees have gone from $20,000 down to about $5,300 with the star exemption. There is no other townhome that compares in the area. this is where I want to be.
Warm weather, light breezes, boats are in the water. There's no better place to celebrate summer than the Dock Shop. Whether in Darien at 51 Tokenique Road or Westport at 609 Riverside Avenue, the Dock Shop is where you'll find everything you need to kick off summer. From the latest summer apparel to the newest fishing tackle, the Dock Shop will help you get the most out of your next beach day or harbor cruise. At the Dock Shop, you'll find a wonderful selection of items made in the USA and right here in New England, all with a distinct nautical flair. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the coastal lifestyle, this is a unique place to shop. DockShop.com.
I'm Frank Granito.
And I'm Donald Ing for the HAN Network.
Tune in to Nutmeg Sports Monday through Wednesday, where we bring you all the top stories for Connecticut sports.
From players and coaches' interviews to expert opinions with local sports editors, no one gets you closer to Connecticut's games than Nutmeg Sports.
Nutmeg Sports, Monday through Wednesday at 2 p.m. on the HAN Network.
Give your day a jumpstart with the latest news, sports, weather, and more on Coffee Break, live on the HAN Network, weekdays at 11 a.m. Connecticut news doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break.
We are back on this week's CT Pulse. Great conversation with First Selectman Tim Herbst. If
Spirited,
you
at
missed
least. I don't know if it was
Spirited,
great.
it wasn't great. It was spirited, but we appreciate him coming in and talking with us, and we'll have him on again in the future. If you missed any of that, you can watch it on demand, of course, at han.network. But we're totally going to switch gears now. Just get into a couple stories we're following this week. And Josh, I thought this was interesting. Wilton, not a big town, has seen a 4% increase in its registered voters, 447 more than there were last year at this time. That's a nice bump. Interestingly, Democrats the most, 13% bump in registered Democrats. Do we think it's young people? Maybe they were feeling the burn?
Yeah, or, I mean, it could be that, who wanted to show up for the primaries. We saw actually the same thing happen in Trumbull. I saw we didn't get a chance to talk to Tim Herbst about this, but now Democrats now outnumber Republicans in Trumbull for the first time in a while. Neither has a majority. It's a plurality issue. But I think we did see, because Connecticut, you can't be an independent and vote in the primaries.
Right.
So a lot of people do like to make sure, that's one of the reasons why I make sure that I'm belong to a party.
Right. Exactly. I did see that in Wilton, unaffiliated voters dropped 2%, so more people choosing a party there. And maybe it could be because they set up a computer in Town Hall where people can register online, which, as you can see there, makes life a bit easier, especially for people that are more used to doing things on the web.
Because I got to tell you, that's going to be the most excited you are registering, because when you show up on November 8th and you see your two choices at the top of the ticket, you're gonna look for a bottle of whiskey or something, or bring one with you. Make sure you take a picture of that ballot too.
Now, we just want to we love the Connecticut State Police social media. Whoever
well, I'm
runs it is
worried though
great.
about you, Kate, because
I know. It's a problem for me.
You are obsessed with pumpkin spice lattes, annoying, and I remember,
coffee.
Once the fall season kind of ends, Kate can tell you within a 10-mile radius of this studio which Dunkin' Donuts still have the pumpkin spice
Usually
for
the
the
one on
coffee.
Bridgeport Avenue does.
So, but they made this post here.
I love it.
Why don't you read it, Kate, since you do a better job at that than me.
Well, Connecticut State Police want you to be aware of a new law that they're calling an act concerning fall madness. They joked on social media saying that it will now be a finable offense to engage in and/or post about any activities related to fall until September 22nd. They don't want to hear about your furry boots. They don't want to hear about you carving pumpkins, leaf peeping, going on hay rides, going in a corn maze, although they're great and they open early in our area, so check those out, or pumpkin spice anything. And they said the fine will be even higher if you talk about winter at all. So they just want everyone to enjoy the beautiful weather that we have, which of course on Coffee Break we found out more about from Mr. Frank Granito, our weather expert.
Who's been talking about hockey nonstop too, so we need to report him to the state police.
We need to report him and get him fined. But definitely a good follow on Facebook, the Connecticut State Police. You should check them out. But we are going to switch gears now. A fun, lighthearted part of the show. Drawing conclusions with Doug Smith. He has ruined the iconic Welcome to Las Vegas sign. Doug, welcome back.
Thank you.
Josh wasn't here this week, so we missed your cartoons, but we're happy to all be reunited.
I miss Doug also, not just the cartoon.
So let's talk about what you have for us this week. Town parks are cracking down on drone use.
That's Wavenly Park in New Canaan.
Yes.
I guess they got to be part of the same organization that has the remote controlled helicopters and
Oh,
planes.
right. Could
and
be
nowhere else in town, though, just there.
Could be bad news for the HAN drone if that ever comes back.
Right. Yeah, look out.
Now let's take a look at this next one. Oh, some back to school humor.
Yep.
Bye to summer. Look at that angry kid. That kid is angry.
Wouldn't
Oh. And then I'm off to the Prospector run.
That's in
press.
Ridgefield. The Prospector Theater does a run there to benefit the theater and everything. So.
And you took another use of the term prospector.
Right.
Great donkey there.
I'm off to the run.
That donkey looks very
That is
concerned.
a fine S.
And speaking of runs, this is Sterling House in Stratford. They're down and dirty run, the mud run where they.
Oh, nice.
Do
A
a
little political humor. I
Yep.
figured it had something to do with the presidential candidates. Oh. And tell us about the next one. What's this one about?
Oh, that's from the etiquette column. A woman writes in, talks about her 2 twin sons, and she wants to teach them manners. They're at 5 years old, so
They'll kind of double team it.
should have used that caption for the Elvis in the opening one there for drawing. Thank you very much.
Now, this next one is very sweet. It's my favorite one. Mort Schindel, I believe he was 98 years old. He died on Saturday, Weston resident. He helped turn all these books into
Right,
cartoons.
which everybody, especially the baby boomers, remember the Make Way for Ducklings when we were kids singing
Harold
the
and the
auditory.
Purple Crayon,
Yep.
Where the Wild Things
Curious
Are.
George.
Oh, and so you have all these characters at his
Yep.
grave. That's really sweet. I love that one, Doug. You always get us right in the ticker sometimes, when you're not making us
When
laugh.
I'm not twisted.
Yes, when you're not totally twisted. But we like having both in one person.
It's a nice
so
mix.
keep it up. All right, Doug, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to wrap things up here on this week's CT Pulse. It was an interesting show today, and again, you can watch it on demand. We're off next week. We're going to be on the FCAC tour, so there will be no CT Pulse, but of course, you can catch up on episodes on HAN.network.
Yeah.
Josh?
We'll be back after Labor Day, and that's officially when they say, Kate, the political season begins.
Yes, and we have to remind just not to let Josh bring up Linda McMahon again. He gets a little worked up, but we'll talk about that next time.
Two times. We gave up two
Bye, everyone.
seats in the U.S. Senate for Linda McMahon.